This is Watershed Stewardship in a Changing Climate. So in this presentation, the plan is to explore the urban water cycle challenges and stewardship opportunities in addressing stormwater increases through citizen science. Learn about the work of over 2,200 Northeast Ohio watershed stewards and how you can join them to be a force for positive change. As for our speaker, Lisa Meranti, is that how you say it? Cool.
Very good.
Is the coordinator for the Watershed Volunteer Program, a program created in 2012 to involve citizen scientists in watershed education, monitoring, and restoration. The program is in partnership with Cleveland Metroparks, Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, and West Creek Conservancy. Lisa's love of water influenced her to get a BS in environmental biology and chemistry from Lebanon Valley College in Pennsylvania, and then an MA in environmental studies from Cleveland State University. And with that, you are good to take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to be here. Being asked to be part of this is something that I feel really honored to have happened, because my love, as you've heard, of water has gone on for a very long time. It actually started with this. And so I can recall that in 5th grade, we were obviously studying six-pack rings and the damage that they could cause in the ecosystem. And I cannot recall the exact thing that we saw, the image or the story that we heard, but it sprung in me this desire. So in 5th grade, I organized campaigns throughout the school to collect the six-pack rings. And what do you think we did when we got the six-pack rings? You may have guessed it. We sat around and we cut them up. Okay. And my time in 5th grade was a long time ago, right? And so at that point in time, there was no way for the six-pack rings to break except to cut them up, or obviously many years of letting it degrade. So, this was an opportunity for us to contribute in a positive way, to be stewards to the environment, to make sure that these six-pack rings did not get into a water body and harm wildlife. So while we cut them up, we had conversations around, the things that were kind of concerning us. And it's very ironic. So I go into schools, and 2 years ago, I found this particular six-pack ring on the ground by the storm drain. And if you're studying this with me here, you'll notice there's no pulley tabs on this one. So nowadays, many of the six-pack rings have a little pulley tab so that it makes it really easy, or just in general, as it's, if it's out and about and it flushes into the system, it can naturally sort of peel open a little bit easier. This one was from 2018, and it still has no pulley rings, and it's not made of a plastic that's going to biodegrade any quicker than when I was in 5th grade. And I won't give you the date of that year, but it was many years ago. And so it's very ironic to me that my career started in 5th grade. Now, did I know that at the time? No. And would I have thought that by now, when I've been many, many years into this work, that there would still continue to be six-pack rings without little pulleys that I could gather with all of you and cut these up still? Like, I never would have thought. So this work still continues, just as our streams continue and they meander and they push through different obstacles, so does the work of being a steward. And so today we're going to talk about streams and stewardship, and this idea around the changing climate and how we can be those stewards of positive change. So, you heard a little bit about my story already, but I just want to take you through the flow of my life. So I am not a native Ohioan. I grew up, if you look at the screen on the left side, that is an image, which you could probably think anywhere in the world. And there's probably no way to give you a clue of where that is, but perhaps you know that that's the Delaware River, and that is me flying in to the Philadelphia airport. So give a shout out if you knew that, because then you really get some bonus points. So this could look like many places. You may notice there's some greenery. You may also notice that there's some industries. So I grew up in New Jersey, right across the Delaware River from Philadelphia. And in this area, we had about 4 different oil refineries. We had 2 different chemical plants. And we did, in fact, have a stream that ran through all of them, or some of them, I should say, right into the Delaware River. So this town that I grew up in is Paulsboro, New Jersey. You can actually Google it, and you can find that the scene of a really bad oil spill from one of the trains that was going over that stream that then leads into the Delaware River had such a bad leak that my cousin, who still lives there, is now on permanent medical coverage because of that oil spill, because of the contaminants. So it still continues today. So that was the scene of where I grew up. And I very early on knew about, obviously, that this wasn't right. This was environmental injustice. And so when I went on to college in Pennsylvania, I got nudged by an amazing professor to study water quality. He also then went on to nudge me to apply to Cuyahoga Valley Environmental Education Center. If you're familiar, that's in Peninsula, right in Northeast Ohio. And the reason that I decided to take this job was because to be at the birthplace of where the Clean Water Act, to me anyway, where the birthplace of the Clean Water Act that, really was significant to creating some really big legislation and changes to our country and the world around water quality. That was certainly a very important thing for me, and didn't realize that I would stay here. I was eventually hoping to move out west, but I have landed here because I definitely love the Cuyahoga Valley and all things Northeast Ohio. So a number of years ago, I shifted to the opportunity to work at the Watershed Stewardship Center. Has anybody been at the Watershed Stewardship Center? Give me a little wave, a thumbs up if you have been. All right. So definitely then inviting you to come to the Stewardship Center. The building is not open at this time. However, it is somewhere that you can walk around. And it looks like we have one, Russia, of course you've been there. So we have one person that have been. So you can go around the Stewardship Center right now, and you will be able to see some watershed stewardship practices in place just around the outside of that building. So that was certainly, some meanders for my journey. As I mentioned, I was hoping to move out west, but instead I ended up taking a trajectory. So if you map with me that I grew up in Philadelphia, around Philadelphia, right across the river in New Jersey, and I moved to Ohio to Cuyahoga Valley, and then I have moved now since there up to the Parma area. So I'm almost taking the same path as the Cuyahoga River. Let's see here, my screen wants to advance or no? It's not advancing on my end. Okay, there it is. So similar to my flow of kind of growing up in around Philadelphia and then going to Cuyahoga Valley and then moving and shifting up towards Parma, my journey's kind of been in this similar shape of the Cuyahoga River. So very interesting water body where it flows from a northeast corner and it flows south to the summit in Akron, which, nickname for Summit, or Akron is the Summit, and it's Summit County, and then flows to Lake Erie. So I didn't realize that my path kind of mirrored Cuyahoga until yesterday when I was doing that reflection. So another good connection for me. So this Cuyahoga River has been very significant, not just in my life, but in many. And so do you want to put in the chat or unmute yourself and share what this photo is or when it's from?
Hello.
Hi.
This is Thibault, a PhD student from the University of Akron. Is this when the river caught fire?
Yes, do you know what year?
I don't know. I think last year they were doing the 20-year celebration or something. I don't remember.
Last year we celebrated 50 years.
Oh, 50 years, okay.
Yeah, from the last time that the river caught fire. So in 1969, there was the significant fire that really sparked the national attention, made it in Times Magazine. This photo, however, though, thank you for chiming in, this photo is from the 1952 fire. So there was actually recorded last year when we celebrated the 50th anniversary or 50th year from the last fire. It was, the river had caught fire 13 times. We did have a river fire this year. However, unfortunately, there was a car accident that had some spill. So the river did catch on fire this year. So we are now at 14. So, you know, this image here is another image that made it into national attention and into national media coverage, because this is what the Cuyahoga looked like. And I don't know about you, but as I told you the story of where I grew up and what the conditions were like, I would go down to the streams and go down to the river, and it was definitely highly polluted being in a very industrial area, but it certainly didn't look like this. So if you see here that there is a ton of debris and oil and dust filth in the Cuyahoga. So I don't know how that lands in your body, but even today, seeing that image and having this discussion with you, it gives me goosebumps. It puts in my body this just anger, this feeling of just frustration that this is how we treated our water. And thankfully, you know, the path and the story of the Cuyahoga really became the headline to help draw more and more national and worldwide attention to addressing water quality issues. So a little extra bonus that came out of it. So we've taken some time to reflect. At least you've been hearing some of my reflection of my journey and my story. So I want to invite you to have some time to have some personal reflection. So I'm going to encourage you to think about, where are you on your stewardship journey? Now, whether it's in the regards of water, or it's in regarding food, or it's other environmental injustices or social injustices, wherever you may be in terms of what are you stewarding? What is it that you are trying to bring about positive change to? So I want us to take some time. I have a couple slides for that, for us to look at our stewardship journey. And then I want to invite us to think about, how do we use water? And so you can think about how I see Cynthia's got her mug there. So yeah, lady, nice. So, you know, what's in there, right? I'll bet there's some water. Maybe some coffee grinds in there. Are you a coffee? Okay. All right. So let's take this journey together. So this is my version of a diagram that was created by the Worldwide Fund for Nature, which used to be called the World Wildlife Fund. And this is based off of a diagram that they had in looking at business modeling around stewardship. I have then since kind of tweaked it with full credit to them to have it kind of reflect our watershed stewardship journey and where we are over the course of time and in our journeys. And so again, if the water piece isn't the thing that you are most feeling called to think about, I certainly invite you to think about the other issues that you may be working to address in terms of stewardship. So the way this goes is you can see that over the course of time, the level of stewardship or level of what shows on here, watershed sustainability, what you're working on might change over time. And so on the upper right corner, I placed the different ways in which you could engage at these different levels of stewardship. So I'm going to invite you to think about, if you were to place from that top right corner, those different stages, where would you place them on that timeline, on that trajectory of the level of engagement of stewardship with your time? Just take a moment to kind of notice that. I started to kind of shift mine over a little bit. So you can kind of think about, if you were to start to drag, if it was an interactive screen, I'll work on that next time with someone's help that's very tech savvy, how you might start to shift those stages over to place on your graph. So we'll go back to a blank, and I'll just give you another moment here to think about how to create an image of your journey. Maybe you want to sketch it on a piece of paper. You can also add it into the chat as to where you would be. What would be your bottom left corner? What would be your first stage of your stewardship journey? And then again, if you're drawing it, then I invite you to show it on your screen, or you can type it into the chat. And give me a thumbs up if you need another moment. Unless you're ready, if anyone's ready to share, you can either go ahead and unmute. We'll duke it out who gets to speak first. Looks like Alexa might be typing, and see who would like to share first. And then I'll give you the reveal of what the Worldwide Fund for Nature, how they have it outlined. All right, so feel free to share in those platforms, but we'll take a look here. So the way that they have this diagrammed, the stewardship journey, is that first stage is the water awareness. All right, so look, let's see what we've got. So we have, oh, this is nice. It's nice that you typed it in, because then we can see where we fall. So water awareness, looks like we have others who might be feeling that way, right? Is understanding. It's interesting to sort of think about where, when we think about our understanding of a problem, what does that look like, right? So an awareness of looks different from, the knowledge of the impact, right? We need to come to just being around water, to being exposed to its amazing benefits, health and mental, physical, spiritual benefits, but also being aware of some of the risks, not just of drowning, right? But of pollution. So thank you so much for chiming in the comments and that. And so as we expand from that awareness, that knowledge, we can shift towards some personal changes. And now I want to recognize that, I talk to students often, and it doesn't always go in that linear fashion. It could be that they have been influenced by others and they're aware of water and they have been, informed of some internal actions to take prior to having a really strong knowledge of the impact. So I just want to recognize that, your path might not be this straightforward. As I talked about my path before, it wasn't exactly a straight linear line. So, we're looking here at this linear line. Once we've taken internal action, we may work to have some stakeholder engagement, where we can be involved more in water management and conservation actions. And then perhaps the next stage is for governance. We're seeing here that some folks are feeling that they take some more influence around government before, or governance, which doesn't have to be with just government, before engaging with other stakeholders. So just wanted to have that moment. So thank you so much for participating and thinking and reflecting on your journey, which may mirror and match this very linear here. It may also meander, just as a stream does. The more that you have knowledge and the more you work towards some of your own actions, that can inform you that maybe now you have a greater knowledge of the impact, and then you work towards government. So I just think that it's really important to understand these different pathways to stewardship, and that journey may be linear and it may meander some. So the other piece that I invited us to reflect on was how we used water today. So you might want to chime in. Again, welcome you to chime into the chat, or if you want to unmute and be heard with your unique voice, then I invite you to just kind of share, what are some of the ways you used water today? We already saw that Cynthia had some water in her mug with some coffee grounds.
So I know for me, I used water today by watering my plants, making tea, making breakfast, and even for drinking. So that's where I'm at so far.
Great. Did you brush your teeth?
Yes.
Wash your hands and all those good stuff.
All that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Well, now water is very important in preventing the spread of COVID-19 due to hygiene, washing hands to help clean and sterilize things. Changing water to steam for me, because I have sensitive lungs, so I can't do a lot of chemicals. So, using it for cleaning.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's so fascinating to think that, living in this time of pandemic, one of the biggest lifesavers is water. And we know water is life, right? But just to bring that home even more significant right now. Thank you so much for chiming in. All right. So we have some friends in our chat that are sharing that Ebony says that she was drinking water, showering, washing dishes, and flushing the toilet. You have been one busy woman, Ebony Hood. And then we have Russia that is saying that recreationally, right? Kayaking mostly. So you were very brave, dear, if you were kayaking today. But I'm really glad to see you're out there enjoying that. So, one tool that I put up on the screen is the water footprint calculator. You may be familiar with looking at like a carbon calculator to note your carbon footprint. And so this is a way to sort of look at your water usage. So definitely invite you to visit this at some point if you haven't already done so, and just do an inventory to see where you are with your water footprint. And so as we kind of go through, kind of looking at our time, so I'll move through these and we'll begin now to think about water usage in terms of the ecosystem services. So the UN had a gathering to look at some terminology and came up with this terminology of the ecosystem services so that we could have a conversation around what are the ways in which nature provides for us. And so some of these terms may be ones that we use in our lives, and maybe not so much. So again, I want you to think about, if you want to chime in and unmute, totally welcome that, so that we can think about, for you, when you think about water is providing provisioning services, what does that mean? And obviously the images on the screen can give you some ideas. So when we think about provisioning, we are thinking about the drinking water, right? The actual ability to drink that water, that's provisioning. The food sources, as you see here, one of our friends here, this is caught in I believe this was Rocky River, in providing food source. So there is the services provisioning. We also have the service of supporting. And so this image, you might be familiar. This is in Cleveland. This is in the flats. This is actually Scranton Flats. This is a stretch that we at Cleveland Metroparks have been working to restore, to try to create some habitat for fish along what is kind of essentially like a bathtub. It is, dredged so that there's walls with very little vegetation. There's a flat bottom so that we can have these freighters, so that we can have some transportation. So this is a service, a supporting service of our water bodies for transportation, our shipping, for not just that, but also thinking about the water that goes into production, whether it is for high-end industry, if it is for watering our crop fields. And so there's our supporting service of our water. Then I want you to think about from the ecosystem service of regulating. How does our water bodies regulate? So in regulating, we can think about how they can serve as storage tanks, right? So when we have an extreme storm event, which as we know, we are seeing increasing storm events and severity of the storm events as our climate is changing, we are seeing more and more storm water. And so our streams that's what they're designed to store, to have floodplains that allow for the water to spread out. And then eventually, as water level lowers and things move on, then they are able to hold on to some of that nutrient in one place to be able to then create a filtering system. So, that pollution reduction process is a regulating process of our streams. And then we have the cultural services. We have the idea of streams, and being in and around water is good for us mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. If we think about the times that we seek to be around water, raise a hand if when you think about taking a vacation, you choose to be around water. Is there anybody? You can give me a thumbs up, wave hand. Okay. Cynthia, I have you. Okay, see you. See you there. Did you want to say something?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I was just saying exactly perfect.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you so much. So, this is a really big cultural service that water plays for us. There is a book that has been really influential for me. It's called Blue Mind. Wallace Nicholas is the author. He is a ecologist. He studied turtles in Mexico, and he worked with indigenous cultures to look at how to protect endangered turtles. And his work was very grueling, and you can imagine. And he shifted gears a little bit to look at what are the health benefits to humans to just being in and around water. And so it's amazing, you know, it is all the studies, the scientific studies to prove what we know, that it feels really good to be in and around water. You know, we certainly know that for some people, there's some trauma that may occur in and around water that may not always be the absolute case. But in a, you know, biological, chemical processes, they studied in this book with a bunch of researchers how being in and around water physically and mentally changes people. So, you know, as we kind of think about those usages of water, then we think about, well, okay, well, where does water, well, we'll talk in a moment where water comes from, right? That's the water cycle. But then where does it go, right? And so I've thrown around this term of a watershed. And so what is a watershed? So you can think about that, maybe draw it. We've got any drawers again in the crowd. If you sketched what a watershed looks like, what does that look like? So let's see here. Does yours look like that? A shed? That's I'm really bad drawer, but that's my image of a shed, right? So a watershed is the body of land in which a water source flows over and around and through until it gets to another body of water. And so the area of land in which that water travels is the watershed. And so we can think about watersheds then flow into other watersheds. And so if you think about where you are, like what is your location right now? So you could say that you are in Northeast Ohio. You could say you are in Ohio. You could say you're in Cleveland. You could say you're in Cuyahoga Heights, or you are in, you know, the east side of Cleveland, or you are on the west side. So wherever you are, you can always think very locally, or you can expand that out. And so that is the same concept when we think about our watersheds. So this map is of watersheds that are within the boundaries of Cleveland Metroparks. So you can see the emerald necklace. If you kind of scan around for those blue bits of land, and not blue, sorry, the green bits of land that cover what is the emerald necklace, Cleveland Metroparks property. This shows that we have a whole bunch of different sub watersheds within our boundaries. But at the end of the day, our watershed that we can look at here in the upper corner is Lake Erie, specifically the central basin of Lake Erie. So that is a watershed that no matter where you are in Northeast Ohio, your watershed is Lake Erie or the Great Lakes. And so regardless of which individual watershed you are, all of that water is going to be flowing into Lake Erie, which what comes out of Lake Erie? Our drinking water, right? Like what we are drinking is coming from Lake Erie. So we are all kind of connected and tied together by that single source of water. But it obviously has to do with what the quality is like of each of these sub-watersheds. So when we think about streams, we can think about their uniqueness. So we can think about them in terms of snowflakes, right? No two snowflakes the same, although I still want to challenge, you know, science to show me that that is in fact true, you know. But we think about water, when it freezes, it takes these unique shapes. And so obviously when it's in the liquid form, it is very unique. And so we can look at each of our streams and we can see that they are all unique. They're all providing some of those ecosystem services that are the same, but in different ways, right? The habitat that they're providing, what is living, the inhabitants there. So the type of macroinvertebrates, the bugs that are in there, to the fish, to the types of vegetation, those are all unique to each one of these streams. And so as we study streams, we look at streams from different points of view as well. We look at some of the functions that they provide. So you don't have to get caught up in this diagram, but to think about the fact that when we look at our streams, we can look at them through different lenses of functions that they have. So whether it's the transporting of the water specifically through that channel into what the substrate and the sediments are like around it, to what it is transporting, if it's transporting sediments or woody debris through there. We can think about the chemistry of what that stream is like and what life and the biology in that stream. So we then look at different ways to view the stream. You know, as we think about the ecosystem services, as we think about the function, we also think about the structure of those streams. So in this image, you can see that we can look at streams from different ways. We can different lenses. We can look from like as if we were flying from an airplane, just like that image I showed you on one of the first slides when I was flying into the Philly airport. We can view streams from above. We can view them from a cross section, and we can view them from inside the stream. So let's take a look. So what does your bird's eye view look like? What are you seeing when you look at a stream from a bird's view or from that plane view? We might look at the stream and start to notice that the stream has meanders, it has bends. It's taking the principles of physics and moving that fluid through hard surfaces with different hardness of those surfaces. And so that can tend to have different energy flows, different things that it's coming up against to create these meanders. And so we look at a stream and we think about if that stream is having those meanders or is something that has created what would be the channelization, which has caused that stream to kind of straighten out a bit. So those are some ways we can look at the stream from the bird view. We can also look at a stream from the fish's view. So if you were a fish, what are you concerned with? Well, you might be concerned with what are you going to eat? You might be concerned as to where you're going to hide so that you are not eaten. And as we looked at that image of the shipping channel down at the Scranton Flats, and I told you about how it's like a bathtub, there's not a lot of vegetation, which is something we continue to work on. And so, you know, as a fish's view, that is really important to think about what you're eating and where are you hiding, where are you raising your babies. And so that is a way we can think about from the fish's viewpoint. Then you might think about the otter's view. That otter is going to be sliding down that waterway, and you know, who doesn't want to be an otter, right? To think about just playing along. But certainly if your bottom of your stream is not conducive to that, that is going to be an issue. And so we want to see that we have some differences in terms of the stream bottom. And so when we think then about the stream and we start to take that lens of not just the human perspective, but thinking about conditions of a stream from a fish's view, a bird's eye view, an otter's view, we want to think about what is going to make that stream a healthy stream system. What are the characteristics? So what do you notice in terms of these images? You know, what makes for a healthy stream? You can kind of chime that into the chat, reflect for a moment. What would make that stream be healthy? Certainly, I think that having stewards and caring individuals to help make it so is really important to help us think about keeping this system intact from having a vegetation along. So you may notice trees along the stream bank. Those trees hold a lot of importance to keeping that those stream banks intact and helping with minimizing erosion. Obviously, in themselves for climate change purposes and our health purposes, those trees have value to the air quality as well as the water quality. So when we think about characteristics of an unhealthy stream, and when we think about the issues for climate change, we think about we're having more and more water. We're having more and more runoff and high flows, in which case that flooding is continuing to occur. Why? Because we don't have that forested floodplain areas, not a lot of that riparian vegetation. So riparian meaning the vegetation that's right along the sides of the stream. So, this image in the middle is not a joke. This was actually in the Cuyahoga Valley in the 70s because they had erosion issues because a lot of the land was stripped of vegetation, stripped of trees for farming, and they had significant erosion issues. So what did they have they couldn't put in place besides planting new trees right at that moment? They pushed up a bunch of old cars to try to help stabilize that stream bank. And so when we think about those unhealthy ways of a stream, we see a lot less vegetation and we see a lot more infrastructure that's built that doesn't allow for permeability, the water to flow into the ground and through those systems. So that takes us to the water cycle. When we think about the water cycle, we think that if water's going to come down, it's going to flow downhill, and then it's going to there's going to be some evaporation to bring it up back and then back down. However, when we start to look at the urban water cycle, we start to see that there is some impediments, there's some obstacles to that natural system. And so if you take a look at the images as to what on the left in the natural water cycle is there that isn't there in our urban, that isn't there in the urban water cycle. Now, I love our cities. I love what we're able to have and create as humans, but we often have seen development that takes away all of our native vegetation. So if we look on the left, we've got those beautiful trees illustrated there. And when we look at the image in the middle of the urban water cycle, we definitely have been rid of those trees and that natural filtration system that is helping with water and air. And so when we begin to think about how can we move forward as stewards and have sustainability, we can start to begin to think, how can we put back some of that natural system, bring back those ecosystem services. And so we're looking at things like, where can we have wetlands that once were, that we might be able to restore? Where can we bring some native vegetation for some of that filtration? So that is where the work of all of this and protecting these water bodies is something that the founder of Cleveland Metroparks has stated in the very beginning is everyone's business. This is a job and a responsibility for all of us. Certainly there's some industries and folks who take a bigger stake at this and have a bigger responsibility, but it's every one of us. And so the work that we do at the Watershed Stewardship Center, we don't do it alone. We are very fortunate that the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District sees such a value in protecting our waterways and our ecosystems and our human health. And so in partnership, Cleveland Metroparks, the Sewer District, and West Creek Conservancy, and then some support from the City of Parma, have created this space for us to continue to look at watershed stewardship. So again, I invite you to visit the center and get to know the work that we do with the Watershed Volunteer Program. The work is involving citizens to create positive change, right? To impact their stream, to mitigate the effects of climate change, and to bring about these positive health benefits for us and the stream. So we do work to look at stream quality. And this is one of our stewards doing some macroinvertebrate study. We do work to collect native seeds that is already within our boundaries of Cleveland Metroparks and help to spread those seeds further and further beyond within our boundaries. We look to create green infrastructure, create these systems for allowing for more native vegetation that could create that infiltration and that filter of pollutants. And so planting native vegetation, to doing this work in community and with a body of people who care. I just wanted to share some of these images and this quote by Margaret Mead: to never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And so as you continue your watershed journey, I invite you to reach out, learn more about what's going on here in Northeast Ohio with Cleveland Metroparks, our other partners. And if you have interest to join our work and the over 2,000 watershed stewards, I invite you to reach out and connect with us. WVPinfo@clevelandmetroparks.com is how you can get in touch.